Hello everybody, my name's Dr. Young, and in this video I just wanted to introduce myself, and I also wanted to say thank you for choosing Ohio University. So in this particular video I just want to talk a little bit about my hobbies, what I do for fun, a little bit about my teaching, research, and service background at Ohio University. So where am I from? I'm from a very small town in Meigs County, Ohio, which neighbors Athens County, where Ohio University is, of course, located. So I went to a very small school, graduated with 54 individuals, and I didn't make it too far away from Pomeroy because later you'll see I'm a three-time Bobcat, where I got my undergrad, master's, and PhD there. But here's a few pictures of Pomeroy. It's located along the Ohio River, so a picture of the Delta Queen and the bridge that neighbors West Virginia, and a few pictures of the downtown Pomeroy area. So what do I like to do for fun? Well, I am a sports fan, so I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns, even though they disappoint me quite a bit. I'm also a fan of the Cincinnati Reds and Blue Jackets, of course, which is a little bit different. I guess I never felt any kind of loyalty to Cleveland teams or Cincinnati. I'm from Meigs County, so I'm kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so I just gravitated towards those teams. In Athens, I really like to ride along the bike path of the Hocking River. And I definitely am very interested in traveling. So you're seeing a lot of pictures of my travels. I've been very fortunate enough to travel with my family to various parts of the world and see some of the wonders of the world. And I've actually had the pleasure of taking a few student groups abroad as well, in Slovakia, and China, and in Italy, and also Cuba as well. So in terms of my academic background, like I said, I'm a three-time Bobcat. I've got my electrical engineering bachelor's degree, my master's in electrical engineering, and then I switched fields and got my PhD in mechanical and systems engineering. So along the way, I've worked at GK and Center Metals as a co-op engineer, and that's where I really started to become interested in systems engineering. Later, I worked for General Electric Aviation on a cost estimation project, and we'll see a little bit of about that in my research component of this presentation. And then later, when I was a PhD student, I actually felt like giving back to the community here in Athens and surrounding counties. And I worked on an NSF grant project where we would go into local middle schools and teach science through video game creation. So I developed some video games along with my peers at the time, and we would go into different middle school environments and try to teach science through using video games. So it was a big success and a big hit, and a big part of, I guess, who I am. Later, I was fortunate enough to become an assistant professor at Ohio University. I started becoming an assistant professor at the College of Business. Later, after my tenure track, I was promoted to associate professor, and I'm the director of our online MBA and online MBAn program. So what do I teach at Ohio University? I teach both in the undergraduate programs and the graduate programs, and the classes all center around analytics. So anywhere from descriptive analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. So what about my teaching philosophy? I've really adopted this learning pyramid into my course designs, and the learning pyramid is all centered around how do you retain the information that you take during a class. Okay, so if my job as an instructor is to deliver information, obviously I want you to remember the information and the skills and techniques that we cover. So how do you do that? Well, actually it turns out lecturing and reading are one of the lowest ordered methods for retention. And what's more important is to teach others, practice doing, and having discussions all the way through demonstration on audio visual. So anywhere from audio visual all the way down to teaching others is an active learning. So that's why I encourage people to use the discussion boards or collaborate in small teams so they can teach others. Sometimes you'll be the one asking questions, sometimes you'll be the one answering questions, and that collaboration can go a long way into retaining that information. You'll get a lot of practice doing and solving problems in my courses. We'll have those discussions throughout various classroom environments, whether it's online or face-to-face. And you'll see us demonstrate various solutions, usually through audio-visual means. So what do I do for service? Well, I'm the analytics champion at the College of Business, and along the way I've had the pleasure of introducing quite a few programs centered around analytics. So back in 2013, right after I was hired as an assistant faculty member here at the college, I was a part of a small team that launched our undergraduate business analytics co-major. And then at that time, I was the online MBA director, and I thought the analytics concentration would be a good added option for our students because analytics is certainly an in-demand skill set to have in terms of business application and career growth and things of that nature. And then we started rolling out other programs. So we have a business analytics minor in our undergraduate program. We have analytics certificates now. We have the Masters of Business Analytics program, the Advanced Analytics Certificate program, and our newest one to date is our Business Analytics Leadership Certificate. So I am involved in several other programs here that are outside sort of the umbrella of analytics. I participate in a program that's partnered with Sogeti NL. They're an IT consulting firm, and they send their new hires to Athens, Ohio from the Netherlands for a 3-week immersive training and professional development program. So I've been a faculty member at times. I've been an interim co-director of that program when there was some leadership changes. And I also participate in the Global Consulting Program. So essentially, that's a program in which we send students in our undergraduate programs and sometimes graduate programs abroad. So usually we have 7 or 8 or so different locations in maybe China, France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, and a few other locations that we have partner institutions, and we send our students there. They collaborate with their students, and we work with local businesses over that 3-week time horizon. So what is analytics? Well, simply put, we need data, and data is easier to collect more so now than ever. And with that data, we really need to leverage it to make business decisions. And it all starts out with descriptive analytics, which is basically creating summaries of data. It's creating dashboards and things that provide insight to our business operations. And then it moves into sort of a second pillar, if you will, of predictive analytics. And that's basically asking what will happen in the future. So we collect that data, build models around that data, and try to get insight for the near future or long-term future as well. And then it moves into what I would call the third pillar, which is prescriptive. And that's all about how can we make it happen? What is a way we can operationalize our decision? And it really centers around topics that include optimization. So how do you make the best decision with limitations? Limitations can come in the form of human capital, raw materials, financial limitations, and so forth and so on. So we'll just talk about analytics since that really centers around my teaching and research and service side of things. Descriptive analytics, again, it's creating those dashboards and it's asking the question, what happened along the way that we collected this data? But it actually takes a lot of human input before we can make a decision and operationalize that with action. So it's the sort of lesser tiered, if you will, analytics, but it doesn't mean it's not important. It's actually critical because it also plays into predictive and prescriptive. Predictive takes a little less human input because we have a model, and once we have insight about the future, we can create strategies and then operationalize those. Where prescriptive analytics is the highest business value, and often it takes predictive analytics to make forecasts, and we're basically automating the decision practice. So what do I do for research? Well, not surprisingly, my research is all centered around analytics, and given my background, I also use that analytics for operations management. So in terms of analytics, I like to develop methodologies, and those could be pre-processing methodologies to prepare data for analysis or modeling. I like to create different methodologies to model data, and I like to extract knowledge from those models once they're developed. In terms of operation, some common topics in operations would include cost estimation, scheduling, order fulfillment, and things of that nature. But given analytics is so diverse and so applicable, I also get into other aspects like financial modeling and environmental engineering. And since I'm passionate about sports, I also have done some research in sports. And I do feel passionate about education, so I do have some research under that topic as well. I'll just go through some of these topics quickly. Most of these topics either come from my thesis project as a master's student, or my dissertation as a PhD student, or just recent publications that I've had. So I started my research journey with the General Electric Aviation project, and essentially what we did is design software that's used as a preliminary design tool. So every little bit of parts through a jet engine, either military or commercial, we would model in terms of the material cost, labor, hours needed to manufacture those parts, and other things needed to get an idea of how much those jet engine parts would cost. This is a project I worked on for my master's thesis, which essentially boils down to how do we become more accurate at estimating the cost of these jet engine parts. So anytime we repeat processes, there's some learning that's involved, and once we make more and more parts, we actually get better, quicker, and more proficient at creating those parts. So we took a look at a learning rate through a family of jet engine parts to improve the overall accuracy of forecasting. This is another application of that software where we looked at different aspects of forging, and the material cost alone for jet engine parts is quite significant, so we developed a software that would estimate the forging cost of these jet engine parts. As I noted, I really like to investigate different methods. This is just one. It's related to what's called a decision tree. And essentially the idea is that we manipulated the traditional algorithms to improve the overall estimating quality of various relationships that we're exploring. And again, this is another methodology type of analysis that I did. And in predictive analytics, there are a lot of things which are known as black box models that are very complicated and very hard to understand. We took a systematic approach, my advisor and I at the time, took a systematic approach about extracting some of that knowledge learned by artificial intelligence to create a more understandable model. As I noted, I get into financial asset management and financial forecasting and things like this. So this is one of those papers I worked on. And you're seeing some graphs about the model predicting various bond performances or international stock performances. And since analytics is so diverse, I'm also interested in a different type of prediction, which basically groups alike data together, so more or less clustering, so detecting those structures within networks. So they actually have a lot of benefit, and I'll talk about that for just a second. Once you know maybe who sellers are, think of eBay, think of Amazon, we can actually detect whether there's some strategic connections between sellers and buyers that we can actually incentivize that network, so we're actually promoting more and more sales. So I also get into environmental engineering. This is one of my recent publications of trying to predict the energy use of heating or cooling a building. So once you can model that accurately, you can use it as a design tool, because you might identify some features about a building that can actually be beneficial to its thermal properties. Now I'll talk a little bit about my sports analytics background. Some of these topics come back from when I was a student, and I had an advisor that encouraged me to explore the use of analytics through anything that I was passionate about. This particular example is trying to predict Hall of Fame status using artificial neural networks, which is a true passion of mine. So it's published way back in 2008, and some of these players were still active at the time or recently retired. And we went through a methodology of predicting whether these players would make the Hall of Fame or not. And then probably one of the things I'm most noted for, at least for the people that know me, and I have actually published this work too, is that my dissertation was called HART, Heuristic Evaluation of Artificially Replaced Teammates. And since I'm a Browns fan, I really thought about a project for my dissertation And I thought, boy, if I could develop something for general managers in the NFL to use during the draft or free agency, that would be ideal. So they were definitely my motivation. And it definitely has roots in things that I was working on as a PhD student, like cost estimation, human factors, ergonomics, team formation, team compatibility, and what's known as a knapsack problem. A knapsack problem is simply this. We have a roster limit, we have a salary cap. How do you pick enough players to fill that roster limit by not exceeding your salary cap? So this, of course, is complicated by many, many factors: injuries, strength of schedules, other dynamics, resources, etc., etc., etc. So it was very interesting. I'll talk a little bit about sort of the journey I had. I wanted to look at human factors because we all know it takes physical skills to play football. So I needed a way to estimate how athletic these athletes were during their whole careers. So maybe 20 to 30 or so years of age. And how would they perform in NFL combine events over time? And so that presented a unique opportunity for me to build these inputs into my model to assess how valuable from a game-winning perspective these players were to their team, which later basically led to me creating draft strategies and free agency strategies. So we needed a sort of theme in mind when it comes to football, so we included these positions that you're seeing on the left into the model. And ultimately, like I just kind of alluded to, my model was to predict winning percentage of the next season given a team's current roster. So what can you do with this type of analysis? Once you can predict a team success in the following season, we can start to swap out inputs into the model, and we can use that to assess whether a player will be contributing to your success or maybe even losses. So we can have all sorts of applications. One is mock drafts, which you're seeing here. What I like to talk about is that Jamarcus Russell probably will go down as one of the bigger busts in most recent times in the NFL draft. So Jamarcus Russell was actually picked in the 2008 draft, but my model said pick Hall of Famer Patrick Willis. It also has interesting things like picking Brady Quinn at the Lions, who arguably was the most NFL-ready quarterback at the time. The Detroit Lions didn't make a mistake by drafting Calvin Johnson. As a Browns fan, I always felt that this was interesting. It said to draft Adrian Peterson. And again, I would say we didn't make a mistake drafting Hall of Famer Joe Thomas. But there's several other things that were interesting throughout this analysis. And actually, what we'll find later in a publication is that if you look at my first round, we have more players that had more productive years of service in the NFL than what actually happened in the NFL draft. We can look at it in terms of trades within the draft because we can assign points to those picks. We can also look at it from a negotiation standpoint about who you're overpaying or maybe underpaying on your roster. This is one of my most recent publications looking back at Hart and publishing some of the results. And essentially we took a look at experts in the field. So these are GMs or people that evaluate NFL talent. And they basically said that my tool was useful to very useful on categories related to identifying which positions a team should target, which specific players a team should target, draft day trades, and overall decisions with the draft and free agency. This is one of my more recent areas of study. It's actually one of my more recent publications. What you're looking at here is an application to GCP, the Global Consulting Program, and after becoming a faculty and a director in that program, I wanted to give back. I was no longer active as a faculty or a director, but I'm still interested in the program and thought I'd put my analytical skills to use. So actually what I've developed here is an assignment problem. Sometimes we have 250 or more applicants from our undergraduate program that need to go and fill 167 spots in terms of how many we can actually send just due to the capacity constraints that each site has. So we're looking at various inputs of our students and trying to maximize the experience in terms of a faculty's perspective, getting the students that they want, trying to maximize the students' choice of where they go, what their first selection or first priority was, and the site director's perspective in terms of overall program success. So across all sites, if you will. If you have any questions at all, these are some ways you can reach out to me. You can certainly email me. You can also connect with LinkedIn. If you have any questions about our programs related to the online MBA or our Masters of Business Analytics programs or a number of our certificate offerings, just don't hesitate to reach out to me. I can either answer your question or point you in the right direction of who will have that information for you. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, my URL is below. And with that said, just thanks for watching. Again, I appreciate your interest in our program, and I thank you for choosing our program. And if you ever need anything, simply just reach out to me. Thank you.